Okay, open up your Bibles to Judges chapter 12. Judges chapter 12. This is a fascinating chapter to me. It's a short one, but interesting things are occurring here. This is concluding the story of Jephthah story. It briefly presents the last three of the minor judges, Ibzan, Elon, Abdon. And it also returns to the problematic Ephraimites. And they are problematic. They are frequently mentioned all throughout the book of Judges. It tells us in chapter 1, verse 29, Ephraim did not drive out the Canaanites. The Israelites buried their great leader Joshua in the hills of Ephraim. Ehud recruited troops from Ephraim who helped him defeat the Moabites, so that was good. Deborah began her work there. Later, troops from Ephraim joined her and Barak in the defeat of the Canaanites. After his initial defeat of the Midianites, Gideon called on the Ephraimites to protect the fords of Jordan, those same ones we were just talking about a little bit ago. Tola, a man of Issachar, was buried there. He was one of the minor judges. The Ammonites lived in and fought against Ephraim in chapter 10, verse 9. Jephthah's final confrontation we're going to be talking about tonight is here. And then the last minor judge, Abdon, is from Ephraim. Ephraim was also the home of Micah, the Levite whose concubine was molested, came from Ephraim. The Levite who was hosted by an old man from Ephraim was also staying in Gibeah in chapter 19. And we see Ephraim comes up a lot all throughout the book of Judges. So they appear there frequently. In 9 confrontations that mark, the Jephthah episodes conclude with this intertribal clash. Him and the Ephraimites conflict as a result in this civil war, substantial death toll of 42,000 of the Ephraimites. And this confrontation between them had connections with events before and after it. And the Ephraimites vocally have a confrontation with Jephthah. But let's back up a little bit. And let's look back down here in the first few verses. Drop down there at the beginning or the middle of verse 1 where they cross over. The Ephraimites come to him and they say, Jephthah says to them, "Why did you cross over to fight against the son of Ammon without calling us to go with you?" The Ephraimites said that to Jephthah. So why did they come over there with all these men? More than 42,000 came over there to confront him. What are they looking for? If you're going to bring, let's say, 75,000 men, you cross over the Jordan, and you ask somebody, "Why didn't you call us to come help you fight?" What are you looking for? You're looking for a fight. And as I was saying during Pew Packers, where was this zeal before? The Ammonites have been raiding Ephraim and suppressing Manasseh and the Gileadites for quite a long while. Where was this zeal to get up and go fight? Why are they ready to fight now? And who are they fighting against? Who are they fighting against? Their own people. Why are they so eager and ready to fight their own people over the Ammonites? Why do you think that is? They think they can beat them. They just beat the people that were so oppressive and they wouldn't fight. Why would they think they could beat them? Oh, they're all beat up? Okay. I guess that could be. Maybe they're weary from fighting. They've taken some losses. I guess that could be. But we see they fought in the past. They helped Gideon out and others as well, fighting against oppressors. But now we see that tapering off. They're not involved in that fight, but they are upset for some reason for not being called to fight. Now later on, Jephthah says that he did call them. But we don't see that anywhere in the text in the previous chapter. I think if I was the writer and he made that statement, I was going to put that in my writing, I would show somewhere where he did do that. he did call them. I don't think he did. Why would he say that? Why would he lie? If that is true, why would he lie about that?
I don't think he's lying about it.
You think he did call them?
I think he did call them, and they
Okay.
didn't want to come and help, and now he's saying, why would I call you again? Last time I called you, you didn't come help.
Okay, yeah.
Now we just went it alone.
Yeah, or maybe a possibility is that we were being oppressed for quite a long time, and the call is more of an our call was out to you all. You all never came to help. And so I arose, I came, and I brought this army through the Lord, and he delivered us. You never did deliver us. But now you're going to cross the Jordan with 75,000 men, which would have been nice before, and you're going to want to pick a fight with us. And so they do. And they do end up fighting them. And they make a comment down in verse 4. Then Jephthah gathered all the men of Gilead and fought against Ephraim. And the men of Gilead defeated Ephraim because they said, the Ephraimites said, you are fugitives of Ephraim, O Gileadites, in the midst of Ephraim and in the midst of Manasseh. Now, what are they saying by that? You are fugitives in the midst of Ephraim and in the midst of Manasseh. What kind of taunt is that?
You don't belong here.
That's right. You don't even belong here. And so they took that threat and they beat up on them. In verse 5, the Gileadites captured the fords of the Jordan opposite Ephraim, and it happened when any of the fugitives of Ephraim tried to cross.
It was a collective, oh yeah?
Yeah. And so they asked them that word, if they could say Shibboleth, and if they couldn't say it right, then they would kill them. So that is interesting. So Gileadites, are they Hebrews? Are they the Hebrew people? Do they speak the same language as the Ephraimites? They do. They do speak the same language.
Okay.
Why is it different?
You're working somebody from the deep south, and listen to
Okay.
them. Things change.
That's right. Things are changing. They're becoming different, more and more different. So much so that their language is even beginning to deviate from one another. They're not willing to fight for one another. They're more willing to fight each other. This morning, I'm on Twitter, and I decided, I'm going to make a comment on something here, a reply to this political person, and I wrote it out there just to put it out there, more of a question, and just to try to get people to think about a particular situation. The onslaught that has occurred after that is amazing to me. As people began to attack me without answering the question, and then other people came to my defense before I said anything, and then they began to attack each other, and no one's really answering any of the questions, but dealing with things from 10, 15, 20 years ago, and I'm just scrolling through, reading these things, amazed. Why is that happening in our country? What's wrong? We are.
They've fallen away from the word. Fallen away from what God wants.
That's right. We do not have the same goal. We don't have the same alignments anymore. You got one group who wants to go this direction, another group who wants to go that direction. But when we were a country founded on the Lord, moving in the direction of the Lord, we could sit down and we could have discussions, have debates with people without repercussions. People would stop and think about things. Are the Ephraimites thinking about God in this situation? When they crossed over the Jordan to the Gileadites? No. Was Jephthah thinking about God when he decided, you know what, we're just going to kill every Ephraimite who's trying to flee if they can't say a particular word right? Do you think that was the godly thing to do? Is that what God wanted? do we see them calling on the name of the Lord. The deeper we get into the book of Judges, the more we see, the further they get from God, the more they rely simply just upon themselves and what they think. So the Ephraimites' losses approach the total of fatalities among the Benjamites from Judges chapter 20. So again, like the Benjamites, they were nearly wiped out. Could you imagine losing 42,000 of the men of one tribe? How devastating that would be for that tribe. It hurt them. Almost took them off the map. In Psalms 106, verses 34 to 39, the psalmist writes, "They did not destroy the peoples as the Lord commanded them, but they mingled with the nations and learned their practices and served their idols." He's talking about the judges, which became a snare to them. They even sacrificed their sons and their daughters to the idols of Canaan, and the land was polluted with the blood. Thus they became unclean in their practices and played the harlot in their deeds. He's speaking of the time of the judges. Jephthah was born as an illegitimate child. He was rejected by his family. He was rejected by his community. He joined other young men like himself in the raids of Tob there in Judges 11, 1 through 3. He became a military leader. He led a very great slaughter of the Ammonites and the Ephraimites. Why was his life such a disaster? Judges, the book of Judges here uses the story of Jephthah to show what happens when the spiritual community is more influenced by the world than by the Lord. You see it from the perspective of the Ephraimites. You see it from the perspective of Jephthah and how he approaches things. And the psalmist placed the blame on the dysfunction and the sin of how the Israelites were mingling with the other nations. What the Ephraimites and what Jephthah were doing is exactly what the Ammonites would do in their situation. And so Jephthah's story demands that we re-examine the sources of our conduct and the object of our worship. What's more important to us? Tomorrow, Thanksgiving Day, right? You would think the Ephraimites would have come over and been thankful to what the Gileadites did and to the Lord for taking away this oppressor and turning closer to him, as we saw in the past in previous sections where when they were taken away, they would thank God, they would turn back to the Lord. But we don't even see them turning back to the Lord now, do we? The oppressors are removed, and then they begin to fight amongst each other. Turn in your Bible to Ecclesiastes chapter 7. Ecclesiastes chapter 7. I like Ecclesiastes. I want to look at verses 7 through 14. The writer writes in verse 11, "Wisdom along with an inheritance is good, and an advantage to those who see the sun. For wisdom is protection, just as money is protection. But the advantage of knowledge is that wisdom preserves the lives of its possessors. Consider the work of God, for who is able to straighten what he has bent." Let's stop right there for a second. Verses 11 to 13. What is the writer of Ecclesiastes? What is he talking about? What is his point that he wants us to see about wisdom? Wisdom, along with an inheritance, is good. Why is an inheritance good? What does an inheritance do for you? Yeah, it makes your life easier. In the verse 12, for wisdom is protection, just as money is protection. It gives you that financial freedom or that protection you might need in difficult times. That's wisdom. It's going to help you. Now, we know how wisdom helps us, but he's getting to a very specific point about wisdom. But let's look at the money and at the inheritance for a second. How does money, or that inheritance, how does it protect you?
Fewer other pressures. You don't owe people.
Okay, you don't owe people, that's true. It protects you. Probably, maybe a better example would be, let's say you're driving along and your car catches fire. You get out of it and it blows up and you lose your car. And it's because some reason you don't get any insurance, but you have that inheritance. You can buy a car. It protected you from a major difficulty in your life or whatever it might be. You can put in the situation that you might find yourself in. Wisdom will help you in life, but it is a protection for you also. So verses 13 and 14 again. Consider the work of God, for who is able to straighten what he has bent? In the day of prosperity, be happy. But in the day of adversity, consider. God has made the one as well as the other, so that man will not discover anything that will be after him. What is he talking about? About these days of prosperity and the day of adversity. What is he wanting us to see here? Both are from God. Who's in control, as we normally talk about or say? Who should you consider and keep in mind and be thinking about? Even in the day of adversity, remember God. It may not be the way you want things to go, but maybe God can work things out for what's best if you let him. That's up to you, making the right choice, keeping your mind where it ought to be. It is exactly what Joseph did, isn't it? Did he meet a day of adversity in his life? Many of them. And in all those days, each one of them, he would consider the Lord. A little boy once defined salt like this. Salt is what always spoils the potatoes when it is left out. Let me say it again. Salt is what always spoils the potatoes when it is left out. What is wrong with that statement? Well, he is blaming salt for not being on the potatoes. Is it the salt's fault? Here's using the same negative approach, we could also say, gratitude is what always spoils life when it is left out. Yeah, it's silly. But we do that, don't we? I like how one guy, he was a preacher. He always gave expressions of gratitude, always in his prayer. And one cold, miserable day, the people in this congregation wondered, what is he going to say? What is he going to be thankful this time? And he prayed, "We thank you, O Lord, that it is not always like this." Deuteronomy chapter 8. We'll wrap it up here in Deuteronomy chapter 8. God deals with this very thought and this very mindset that we generally have in difficult times. Verse 8, let's look at verses 10 and 11. When you have got, the Lord is saying, when you have eaten and are satisfied, you shall bless the Lord your God for the good land which he has given you. Beware that you do not forget the Lord your God by not keeping his commandments and his ordinances and his statutes which I am commanding you today. Otherwise, when you have eaten and are satisfied and have built good houses and lived in them, and when your herds and your flocks multiply and your silver and your gold multiply and all that you have multiplies, then your heart will become proud and you will forget the Lord your God who brought you out from the land of Egypt. So what's the worry? It's pretty obvious, I know, but what's the worry? When things are going well and you have all that you need, what do you forget? God. And when you get you get into this rotation of that, like we see in the book of Judges. When the day of adversity comes, who do you forget? God. And so you see what Jephthah did over there, and those Gileadites kind of make you look bad, perhaps. Maybe you didn't like the way you looked. Maybe you didn't like the fact that you weren't involved in that, or maybe you thought, I could have been part of those spoils that they're getting from that. Let's gather all our men. Let's go over there. Let's pick a fight. And Jephthah is over there, and like you were saying, well, we'll show you. We're going to kill you guys trying to cross back over the river. We showed them. And who won? Satan. Because they forgot the Lord. Mainly, they forgot to be thankful to God. Count your blessings. Name them one by one, and it will surprise you what the Lord has done. Tomorrow is the day of Thanksgiving. How many people might be sitting around and thinking about how expensive Thanksgiving dinner was this year? That's the big push. Or whatever it is that whatever politician wants you to talk about. And haven't we been told from both sides what we ought to be talking about at our dinner table? What should we talk about at the dinner table tomorrow? What do you have planned? I like what Jenny's idea she gave. She wants us to have a box. And throughout the day tomorrow, she wants the kids to write down things they are thankful for all day. Put it in the box. And at the end of our supper, we're going to open it up and pull it out and talk about each one of the things that whatever the kids wrote and put in the box of what they were thankful for. And we're going to talk about why. And try to focus on the good things and the blessings the Lord has given us. And we have a whole host of them, don't we? But Satan doesn't want us thinking on those things. And so he's using everything he can out there to distract our minds from the blessings of the Lord. On both sides, on whatever it is. Let's not forget why this day has been separated out for us in this country to be thankful. Let's be thankful to all the blessings the Lord has given us. And the story that we find here in chapter 12 of Judges should help us see that. Else we are moving in that direction.